Carl Bernstein, when did you first hear about the hacking scandal, and when did you start thinking there might be some parallels with Watergate?
The parallels with Watergate, I probably came late to, in the sense of I wrote a piece for Newsweek in the Daily Beast, and then it became obvious that the parallels had to do with the culture itself that made this possible in the Nixon White House. Nixon was responsible for the sensibility that permeated the place that had to do with unconstitutional acts, with a cynicism about the political process and how it was practiced, and a disregard for the law as well. And it was apparent to me, as I read more and more about what was happening here, that really, at bottom, what this hacking furor is about a culture in a newsroom that has nothing to do with real journalism, real reporting, which is very simply the best obtainable version of the truth, but rather has to do with serving up both the lowest common denominator of information and calling it news, and obtaining it through a methodology that is outrageous, whether you're talking about hacking or other kinds of invasions of privacy, and that atmosphere in that newsroom is a product of the culture that Murdoch built at News of the World, and that's what I wrote. Let me add one thing about Rupert Murdoch, though, that to picture him as some one-dimensional figure is a great mistake. He has been the most far-seeing of media executives of our time. He has put The Simpsons on the air. It was said there could be no additional fourth network, entertainment network in American television. He created it. He's been much smarter than most of his contemporaries, and it has served him financially well and consolidated his power, and at the same time the exercise of that power, particularly in this country, in which the basic elements of the civic compact, the police, the media, and the politicians, were really enthralled to his power and its exercise.
But just picking up on that, do you think the age of Murdoch is over in that sense of the shadow and the spectre that he cast?
I think that his power, as it were, is diminished, because I don't think he is held as a result of what we have learned and seen with the same kind of awe by both his peers and those who feared him. At the same time, I think that it's a mistake to oversimplify any of this and talk about, is his power over, is he all good, all bad? I think that's much too simple.
In terms of the kind of the legacy or the impact of the hacking scandal, I mean, one of the things that people say, obviously, is that, Murdoch, for all his bad things, is incredibly popular. The only reason he's becomes this popular is because people buy this stuff. And you kind of talked about this in a 1992 essay about the idiot culture, which seems kind of prescient, but also it seems like it's gotten a lot worse since 1992 as well. What did you mean by the idiot culture?
What I meant by the idiot culture was a journalistic culture, particularly, that celebrates the weird, the coarse, manufactured controversy, celebrity, rather than real news, which is, again, the best obtainable version of the truth. And the essential element of the best obtainable version of the truth is context. The most important thing we do as reporters or journalistic institutions is to make a decision about what is news. And that is where
So who should decide that, though? Who decides what is news?
We should. And the failure of journalistic institutions to maintain standards about what is news, whether you're talking about Murdoch, whose pernicious influence has helped change those standards and push the ever-descending lowest common denominator in defining news, or others, that is a problem for which we are responsible. It's only since all of this broke that we see a lot of Murdoch's fellow publishers coming out, as it were, and saying, hey, it's time to hold his institutions responsible. Well, these same publishers and editors were silent for an awful long time about this kind of journalism. And the really important point to make here is that the absent part of the discussion continues to be about the consumers of tabloid journalism, of this kind of culture, because there is a hunger for this stuff. And it's not as if people are saying out there, oh, I don't want to read it. To the contrary, I mean, Murdoch and other publishers and other tabloids do what they do and report on what they report and use the methods they do because they got these hungry consumers out there, and it works. We can't separate journalism from the rest of the culture. And I think it's something that we in journalism have done, and we've claimed a special place for ourselves without thinking about, wait a minute, we're part of the popular culture. We reflect the rest of the culture. And to think that somehow because we got a press card that makes us exempt and not responsible for what we do is nonsense.
But isn't the question with the internet and sites like Gawker, where essentially the popular is the thing that gets developed, is there a danger that the things that journalists might think people should want to read aren't what they want to follow online, isn't what they want to follow on the blogs?
Well, I think that's one of the great problems of our age, which is that people increasingly are seeking out information not to be informed or illuminated, but rather to reinforce beliefs, prejudices, and interests that they already hold. I think it's a cultural phenomenon, not a necessarily journalistic one. Yet our job as reporters remains, it seems to me, to give a more nuanced, open-minded view of what is news.
What should happen to bad journalists? There's a Labour MP has recently said that journalists should be struck off in some way. Others have talked about regulation. If somebody crosses the line, what should happen to them?
It should be subject to the law, it seems to me. But I very much prefer the American approach to this, which is to say we have a First Amendment to our Constitution that really says that there can be no inhibitions on free speech or the exercise of a free press. Because I think once you start to regulate what reporters or other individuals say and do in terms of expression, you inhibit a truly free society. And I think that's one of that Murdoch's ultimate sin is likely to be that he has caused undesirable regulation of the press that he believed should be freer by his excesses. Now, I also feel very strongly that we in the press have been awful about invasion of privacy and defamation, as if we have a license to do that. And I think it's a growing problem. It's an abuse of our power, and we've got to find some ways to be held responsible within a cultural context, and also perhaps that the victims of invasion of privacy and defamation ought to have much more recourse to somehow induce both correction in the media and perhaps seek some kind of monetary damage. How you do that, I don't know. But I don't think you do it by regulating the press as a separate entity from the rest of society. I think that there are plenty of laws promulgated that we all have to obey that might be able to address this. Might it be possible to establish some kind of small claims or large claim defamation court under a particular legal system? Perhaps. Are there ways to provide in the law for invasion of privacy by the methodology? There already are. Hacking is illegal. Wiretapping is illegal. But the intrusion of Bigfoot journalists into the private lives of public people particularly, but also non-public, ordinary people who get caught in the crosshairs of publicity perhaps. It's a problem, but I don't think the answer is to regulate the press.
Just moving on to politics, next year is a presidential election, and I was just in America, and I was just struck by, there was a poll that came out which said that Richard Nixon's interview with David Frost was the greatest TV interview of all time. And I was just wondering, with the way that politics now in America particularly is so much dominated by the television coverage and the soundbite, do newspapers, are they able to do the job that they used to do in terms of uncovering and peeling away the story?
Well, you got about 3 questions at once there, so let's look at them. First of all, the Nixon-Frost interviews, the reason I believe that they were so popular, I would not say necessarily they're the greatest interviews ever, but it was a great drama. And it was the first time that Nixon had been in front of a camera and asked about these things. So I think that the venue, the setting, and the event obviously was unique. Secondly, newspapers, with the advent of the internet, are in decline all over the world, and a new generation is raised on the internet, not with print newspapers, and that trend is not going to be arrested. The internet is a great reporting medium. All you have to do is look at the website of the Washington Post, the New York Times, the Guardian, the Times of London, the Telegraph, whatever, and you see the possibilities of the internet. One, because there's no space limitations, so that you can run endless documents to support a story, texts, video. So it's a whole different layer of technology that has been applied to a medium that has developed over hundreds of years. So it's a great advance, and it's a great reporting medium. In the process, the economics of the situation are killing newspapers, there's no question. But does that mean that great journalistic institutions have to die? I don't think so. Though many of them have, I think we're going to see fewer and fewer general interest news organizations in the sense of old-fashioned newspapers. To me, the most worrisome aspect of this new culture, which is a combination, it seems to me, of a phenomenon that is not only journalistic, is the desire of many more people than in the past to seek out information that reinforces what they already believe, and who are not truly open-minded. And that makes the audience for real reporting and a receptivity less, even as we have much more ability and place to put the information. People increasingly look at it within a political context, an ideological context, a religious context, looking for information to reinforce what they already believe. Huge problem.
Finally, if you were 16 or 18 years old today, would you still want to get into journalism, and would you still think that it was a viable career?
Yeah, absolutely. I have one son in the profession, and the other's a rock and roll musician. Those would be the 2 professions I'd choose.
Carl Bernstein, thank you very much.
Good to be with you.